If you've been watching the news in the last week, you've probably heard about the
G7 summit.
But what is the G7? And what did they actually get done at last week's summit? The G7, or Group of Seven, is an annual meeting of heads of state from 7 of the world's leading economies: the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States. The group began in the early 1970s as the Library Group, a meeting of Treasury Secretaries and Finance Ministers from the US, UK, France, and West Germany. In 1975, the first official G7 summit was held in France, with the heads of state of the current G7 members, minus Canada, all invited. Canada first attended in 1976, and the conference has been a yearly tradition ever since. Following the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia also participated in the conference, making it the G8 from 1998 until 2014, when it was kicked out in response to the annexation of Crimea. There are two main criticisms of the G7. The first is that the group is not truly representative of who holds power in the world today, specifically who holds economic power. Opponents see the G7 as an exclusive club of mostly European and North American countries. Notable countries left out of the G7 include China, India, and South Korea, who are all in the top 10 largest economies in the world. In order to try to remedy this, the G7 created the G20, a group which includes the 20 largest economies in the world. The second major criticism is that the organization can't actually do anything to address the problems it discusses. Technically, this is true. The G7 is not a governing body, and while leaders at the conference publish a communique at the end of the summit announcing everything they plan to do, there's no mechanism to hold them accountable. In fact, former President Donald Trump refused to sign the communique at the end of the 2018 G7 summit in Canada. So what happened at this year's G7? Heads of state who met in Cornwall in the United Kingdom primarily focused on COVID-19. G7 members have committed to buying over 2 billion doses in total of vaccines in order to end the pandemic worldwide. In addition, leaders agreed on a 15% minimum corporate tax in an attempt to, quote, create a stronger level playing field, unquote, for businesses. Climate activists hoped the G7 would set a timeline to phase out coal-burning power plants. However, that did not occur. Aside from specific policies, there was also much speculation on if and how U.S. President Joe Biden would bring America back to the international community following Trump's isolationist America First policies. Overall, it seems G7 leaders were pleased with Biden and America's return.
Thank you.
I do hope that we have lived up to some of the most optimistic of hopes and predictions.
Those were the major events of this year's G7 summit. Rounding out his first trip abroad, President Biden then met with NATO leaders in Brussels, as well as with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva. Thanks for watching.